a character series of different characters in the Bible. And today we're going to be taking a look at Abraham.
Come on.
And the title of the sermon is Faith to Respond to God's Call.
Come on.
Faith to respond to God's call. In Hebrews chapter 11 verse 8, the Bible says, by faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. Abraham was known as the son of Terah and was brought up in the city of Ur of the Chaldeans. And for Abraham to be called to go somewhere where you don't know, seems a little bit strange.
Yeah, come on.
Imagine if someone just came up to you and was just like, hey, go that way. How would you feel?
Very good.
I'd probably feel pretty weird. Maybe you're like Isaac and you probably feel pretty good about it. I don't know. Just being told to do that and just go that way. Pack up your whole life and go. Takes a lot of faith. So like I was mentioning before, Abraham was the son of Terah and was brought up in the city of Ur of the Chaldeans. In Genesis chapter 11, verse 27 to 32, it says, this is the account of Terah's family line. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran became the father of Lot. While his father Terah was still alive, Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, in the land of his birth. Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarah, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. She was the daughter of Haran, the father of both Milcah and Iscah. Now Sarah was childless because she was not able to conceive. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarah, the wife of his son Abram, and together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years, and he died in Haran. So a place where people worshipped false gods, as we know in Joshua 24 verse 2. Ur was also the place of Terah's pain, which is where his son Haran just died there. When you think about a place of pain, I don't think about staying in that kind of place, personally.
Yeah.
Like, I know if I am heard about something or if, like, something's happened in the past, I'd rather just move on and go on to a new different place. Much like many of us in our lives, we've probably had some past hurts in our life and we've probably moved on, right? And he was staying in a place where he had to bury his son. I think about the pain of having to bury your own child. I don't think any man or mother should have to bury his or her son. It goes against the order of things. Terah, the father of Abram, whose name God later changed from Abram to Abraham, set off for the promised land. He was done with the city of Ur, worshipping false gods, the pain that was there. He gathered his family and he looked for a better life. A life where he could dream again. The promised land, Canaan. Some believe it was he and not Abram who first received God's calling, because he set out for Canaan and the call originated in Ur of the Chaldeans and not Haran. As we know in Genesis chapter 15 verse 6 to 7, it says, Abram believed the Lord and credited it to him as righteousness. He also said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to take possession of it. But yet along the way, as he was traveling there, Terah got comfortable and settled halfway between the pain of his past and the promises of paradise that lay before him. Wow. Is that where you are today? Halfway between pain of the past and the paradise that lays ahead. You don't want to go back into the world, but you don't want to push forward into the promised land through continual spiritual growth. Yeah. Terah went back to worshipping false gods again. He brought back into the false gods of Haran. In 2 Kings 19 verse 12. Did the gods of of the nations that were destroyed by the predecessors deliver them, the gods of Gozan, Haran, Rezet, and the people of Eden who were there in Tel Asla. He would have worshipped different false gods to the original ones he worshipped in Ur. They worshipped gods that did not require you to be so sacrificial or to give all your heart to. I remember going personally when we just came back from Hong Kong in China. So we came back from Hong Kong and we visited a Buddhist temple. And when we went to a Buddhist temple, there were many gods. And Megs and I were just so surprised. We were very, very surprised. Thank you so much. We were very surprised by the different types of gods and what each god was for. There was a god for wealth. There was a god for wisdom. And if you prayed to these gods, that's what you got. So there was no form of sacrifice. No form of giving your heart. There was none of that. It was just you pray to that and then you go on your way. And that was it. But like today, for the religious world, people go to churches that don't require you to give up everything to get the promised land. They simply don't preach the same gospel that Jesus actually preached. They won't tell you in this room, go out, give up everything. Go do it. They don't tell you. But that's what Jesus preached. Luke chapter 14, verse 33. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be any Christian. Come on. AKA cannot be my disciples. What it is. So if you're not willing to give up everything, you just can't be it.
It's true.
It was a worthless life. That's how you should see it. A worthless life. 2 Kings 17, verses 14 to 15. But they would not listen as they were stiff-necked as their ancestors, who did not trust in the Lord their God. They rejected his decrees and the covenant he had made with their ancestors and the statutes he had warned them warned them to keep. They followed worthless idols and themselves became worthless. They imitated the nations around them, although the Lord had ordered them, do not do as they do. A lot of people go out and they're just imitating other Christians. You know, not every single person who calls himself a Christian is actually a Christian. You understand? So if you go around imitating on what a Christian is today, what are they doing that's different than everyone else in the world? What are they doing? Sure, they go to church, sure they pray, sure they read the Bible. What else? What does their life actually look like? What does it look like? Terah died neither in the city of his ancestors nor in the land of his descendants. His bones and soul never found peace. He died between pain and paradise. Having started with great intentions, yet ended up living a worthless life. When you're half-hearted, your dreams become nightmares. Life is like walking up a downward escalator. That's what it is. You can never stand still spiritually. Has anyone ever gone up a downward escalator before? You got to keep going. You got to keep going. If you don't, you just slowly fall back. Right? You got to keep going. You're either spiritually growing, or you're spiritually dying, because Satan and your sinful nature is always pulling you and pushing you away from God. Terah died, never reaching the promised land, in a place called Haran. As with all characters in the Bible, they're written about so that we are to either learn to be like them or not to be like them. Jesus forewarns us that this attitude, the attitude of being committed to God's plan for our life, and then becoming distracted with the world again and settling for unfruitfulness in the parable of the sower. He says in Mark chapter 4, verse 18 to 19, still others, like seeds sown among the thorns, hear the word, but the worries of this life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and the desires for other things come in and choke the word, making it unfruitful. Is this where you're at today? Are you caught between growing or dying spiritually? how do you continue to stay growing spiritually? It takes a lot of sacrifice.
Yeah.
It takes being radical.
Yeah.
What keeps you faithful is being radical. I love what Isaac did just recently. I love Isaac's heart because he always goes, a lot of what he does is just radical. But you know what? That's what's going to keep him faithful to the day he dies, is because he's just radical. We were talking about having a fasting chain, as in for the next 2 weeks until our inaugural service. So if you see all the chairs at the back, that's going to be filled up for our inaugural service. Okay? We're having tacos and all that kind of stuff. I'll even wear my taco socks. I don't have them on today, but you'll see that. But Isaac, when it came to the fast and the prayer chain, was like, I've never really fasted before. I'll fast 5 days straight. I'm like, bro, hang on a second. You want to fast 5 days straight? He's like, yeah, I just want to do something radical. Do you have a radical heart?
Come on, sir.
My first point. Why is Abraham in the Hall of Faith? For the first time.
Question.
Hebrews chapter 11, verse 8. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to the place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. When God called, Abraham went.
Yeah.
Genesis chapter 12, verse 1, and then verse 4 to 5. The Lord had said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. So Abram went, as the Lord had told him. And Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old. There's never an excuse. Age is never a thing, is it? It's never a thing. No such thing as retirement in the Bible. Amen.
Let's go.
When he set out for Haran, he took his wife Sarah, his nephew Lot, and all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran. And they set out for the land in Canaan, and they arrived there. You see, when God called Abram, there were many reasons. There were lots of excuses he could have given for just not obeying.
Yeah.
He could have said, I'm 75 years old. What do you mean? I've got to walk. It's hard for me to get around. What do you mean? I'm 75. He could have gone, yeah, all right, maybe you've called me, but what about my wife? She's old too. He would have gone, look at all these responsibilities and stuff that I have. I've got a lot of stuff. Like, you just expect me to move?
Right.
What about all my friends?
Oh,
I don't know anyone out there. The fact he probably would have had an established life. You could imagine he would probably walk about in the market, hey Jim, hey Jerry, you know all these different people, and it's just like, I'm just going to uproot my life and go.
Right.
The fact that he did not want to leave his father's resting place could have been another one. My father's
Come on, bro.
the sentimental value of an area.
Yeah.
Yet despite all the potential reasons and the excuses, much like we have today when we're called by God, Abraham obeyed and went. Why? Because of who was asking.
Yeah.
And who was asking?
It's true.
God was asking.
Yeah.
God's asking you today. Maybe he's asking you to uproot your life, to go move somewhere, to move to where, not the church closest to you, but the church closest to God,
Yeah.
right? So you can actually have a relationship with him. Bro, that's radical. That's Christianity.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
All right.
Let's go, bro.
I don't know what changed. Jesus was a radical dude. Religious people get upset at that. Well, Jesus upset the religious people.
Yeah.
God's the creator, the sustainer of our life. We exist and we wait every day because God allows us.
Yeah. Come on.
We are his to do with as he wishes. Once we grasp that, it is much easier to surrender to his will for our life. Because there really is no other choice. His will be done whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
That's just the fact of the matter.
Yeah.
Abraham went, and based on the promise of an inheritance, he did not see. We live in a world where we want everything now.
True. Yeah.
I like what the Black Eyed Peas said in their end album. We are the now generation. Everything now. I want everything now. That's the youth of today.
Yeah.
They feel entitled to a house,
Come on.
entitled to a car, to the latest gadgets, without waiting. Much like the prodigal son.
Yeah.
The concept of waiting for an inheritance is alien to most people.
Yeah.
You gotta wait What? I've got to wait for these?
What the?
Why is the internet not working? Just tell me what the answer is. I don't have the directions. You ever heard of one of the direction books? You ever used one of those before? But not so with Abraham. He was willing to give up what he had in the city of Haran for an unseen inheritance that God did not show him.
Come on.
That's faith.
That's faith.
A faith ready for adventure. Going into the unknown. Doing something you've probably never done before.
Come, bro.
That's faith.
Yeah.
That's faith. Being happy every day to wait on God to give you what He wants to give you, that's faith. Just being happy, being content with where you are. I'll tell you what, you'll never be happy until you learn to be content with where you are.
Yeah. Come on.
When He wants you to, and believe that because of who God is, it's always going to work out at the end of the day. It'll always work out. 1 John chapter 4, verse 16. And so we know and rely on the love of God He has for us. God is love.
Yeah.
You see, faith and risk go together. Faith and risk go together. You got to risk to get the risk. Amen.
Come on, Ross.
You see, no one ever did anything great without a vision. And it is vision that enables you to face the difficulties and the discouragements along the way. Abraham was given a vision of the future that would have world-change significance.
Yeah.
He was given a vision that would change the world we know today.
Yeah.
That was the vision he had. He lived a life based on a vision, a dream. He didn't even get to see it in his lifetime.
Sure.
Perhaps you're living a vision today you're probably not even going to be able to see in your lifetime. Are you content with that? Are you content with it?
Come on.
Abraham went even though he didn't know where he was going. We live in a world where people want to know the end before they're willing to begin. Because they don't trust who's asking them
Yeah.
at all. They don't trust in God. This may come from our own insecurities.
Come on, Rob.
Hurts from the past. Well, I did that before and it hurt me. Yeah, so it takes greater faith, doesn't it?
Let's go.
Watching and listening to too many negative things on social media, well, I've seen people do that before, and I've seen people just ruin their life. Maybe because God wasn't on their side,
Yeah.
even though they thought they were. The world does not want you to be trusting. Did you ever notice that? The world doesn't want you to trust anybody.
Right.
They don't want you to do that. So they can sell you a life of insurance, car insurances, gadgets, things to make you feel safe. It doesn't want you to be secure. It doesn't want that. The world needs you to live in fear to fuel its materialistic economy.
Come on.
Satan wants you to be consumed with fear so you will have no room for God.
Right.
Fear is the opposite to faith.
Yeah.
Because if you're full of faith, you ain't got no fear.
Come on, Rob.
And if you're full of fear, you ain't got no faith.
Yeah. Let's go, bro.
Abraham was at peace to live without a plan, without a map to his destination. Go that way? Good. Okay, I'll go that way. That was him. That was Abraham. This goes against everything our insecure nature
Wow.
and our worldly family and friends tell us not to do.
Come on.
Don't do that. That's what they tell us. They go, don't follow that kind of stuff. Don't go that way. That's stupid.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
Come on, Rob.
Let's go, bro. Let's go.
But Abraham trusted that if God had a crazy plan for his life, then God would know how to execute that plan.
Right.
God would provide everything for Abraham and his family as long as he was willing to go. As long as he was willing to go, God's like, I got you. It's all about the heart. It's always
Yeah.
about the heart.
Yeah.
2 Corinthians 9 verse 8. And God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work.
Yeah.
God's always there for you. God's always there for you. But are you there for Him? Second point. How did Abraham change a
Come on,
nation?
Rob.
Bro.
Abraham was willing to let God make him into a nation.
Yeah.
He was willing to let God make him into a nation. Genesis chapter 12 verse 2. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. Genesis 17 verse 8, the whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give you as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God. One man from a backwater town became a nation. The nation of Israel in the land of Canaan, because he was willing to have a life used for God's purpose. Not for his own purpose, and not what he wanted to do, but for God's purpose.
Right.
And so often I hear people go, well, I really think God's trying to say to me X, Y, Z. He's really calling me to be a famous musician. Is he? Or is that what you think?
Yeah.
What does the Bible actually say?
Yeah.
Come
Let's
on.
not put God's words into your mouth. Why don't you speak the Bible?
Yeah.
If you're willing to be used by God, incredible things can happen.
Yeah.
The issue is that most people are simply unwilling to be used by God. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us.
Oh yeah.
Key word, his power.
Yeah.
Abraham was patient towards God's blessing. He knew that it would take time, years, even decades. Yet he was still willing to let God work.
Right.
He happily allowed God through time to deliver his promise and mold his dream through him. Yet he didn't see the reality of becoming a father through Sarah until he was even 100 years old. Genesis 21, verse 2. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised him. Of note right here, the only time Abraham was impatient with God, and impatience is a lack of love in 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4, he sinned in sleeping with a slave girl, Hagar, on his wife Sarah's suggestion. This led to the birth of Ishmael, whose descendants have been enemies of God's chosen nation and disciples to this very day. Genesis chapter 16, verses 11 and 12. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility towards all his brothers. Abraham was willing to let God make him into many nations. Genesis 17, verse 4 to 6 and 10 and 14. God said to him, as for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. This is my covenant with you and your descendants after you. The covenant you are to keep. Every male among you shall be circumcised. Any uncircumcised male who has not been circumcised in the flesh will be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. God made a covenant with Abraham that included circumcision.
Come on.
Not something that you have to do, like a work, but something you have to let someone do to you. In this, we see Abraham was made into many nations because he was willing to allow God to cut off a part that was quite personal to him, if you can imagine. To be used by God, you must allow him access to the most precious and personal parts of your life.
Yeah. Come on.
Even if you don't understand his plan at the moment.
Amen.
That's faith.
Come on.
Let's go.
God was looking to establish a nation, and there are many nations that were willing to allow God to use them, however he thought best.
Yeah.
To not be willing was to be considered outside of God's love and protection. His heart for God to give up everything to save the nations around you is still expected today. Nothing's changed. As seen in the example of Timothy, as in the early church. Acts 16, verse 1 and 3. Paul came to Derbe and then to Lystra, where a disciple named Timothy lived, whose mother was Jewish and a believer, but whose father was a Greek. The believers at Lystra and Iconium spoke well of him. Paul wanted to take him along on the journey, so he circumcised him because of the Jews who lived in that area, for they all knew that his father was a Greek. You know, I think about people that are really willing to give up and just completely change their life around. There was this guy that we're watching on the Good News Network. We're actually showing that next week. His name is Carver Beidou. Maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong. But he came from Trinidad. Okay, so it's in South America, just a small little island, just off South America. And he came all the way from Trinidad all the way to the US. Now to come from a place like that into, America is a big deal. It's really hard.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard. And yet when God's call came to his life, he was willing to give up the American dream of the first world country
Yeah.
to go, I'm going to go back home. I'm going to give up everything I have.
Yeah.
And I'm going to plant a church in Trinidad,
Yeah.
where I'm from. A call to all nations to go back to where they're from. I think about all the people that have really left home to even be here in Brisbane.
Right.
I think about my wife, Megs. I think about Leslie. I think about Alistair and Yvette, Elias and Mel. They gave up everything they had. This church is full of people that gave up everything they had. They dropped their career. They dropped the family and friends they had back in Sydney because they were like, there is a call to go to Brisbane and to help save a bunch of people.
Yeah.
I'm willing. I'm willing. That should be the heart
Yeah.
of
Come on.
every single disciple.
Yeah.
Every single one. Abraham changed all nations for all time. Genesis chapter 12, verses 2 to 3. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. And whoever curses you, I will curse, and all the people on the earth will be blessed through you.
Yeah.
The far-reaching consequences of Abraham's decision to respond to God's calling and be molded are still being felt today. They're still being felt today. Even in myself and all the people around the world. You, me, everybody's feeling it.
Yeah.
All the people, the earth, have been blessed through Abraham's heirs. We will not have Christianity today if it wasn't for Abraham. You know what that means? If you didn't have Christianity, you wouldn't have universities. You wouldn't have orphanages. You wouldn't have hospitals.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even have the thing, like a lot of things actually evolve around it. The way we measure time, okay, like we're in the year 2024. That's because of Christians. All these great things that we have.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ was a direct descendant of Abraham in Matthew chapter 1, verse 1. This is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah of David, the son of Abraham. Matthew, verse 17, skip on over. Thus there were 14 generations, all from Abram to David, 14 from David to the exile to Babylon, and 14 from the exile to the Messiah. Today, disciples are a holy nation, created to be the faithful decision of Abraham and Christ's sacrifice.
Come on.
1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession,
Yeah.
that you may declare the praise of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Point number 3.
Come on, babe.
How can we imitate Abraham's faith today?
Come on.
How can we imitate it? Well, you can imitate it by responding to God's initial call by becoming a Christian.
Yeah.
You can do that. That's a good start. When I became a Christian, I had absolutely no idea just how God would use my life. Yet, it's been amazing. It's been absolutely amazing. It was such a great personal struggle for me at my conversion at the start, right? So I grew up going to the Assemblies of God. So my dad was a pastor, leading in churches in the Assemblies of God. My mum was a pastor at Hillsong. And so I grew up going to, just a whole bunch of different churches. But just because you grow up going to churches doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean a single thing. And so when I was studying the Bible, it was a personal struggle for me to go, do I really actually believe this? I did not realize that God was the only answer to what I actually wanted in life. And I was playing basketball. I was quite good at basketball. So much so that I went to America to play basketball. And my dream and desire was, because I didn't grow up with a very wealthy family, 2-door car, couldn't even make it up a flat hill. And just to go to Bilo. I don't even think they have Bilo now. They don't even have it, it's gone. and so I grew up from that, and I was like, if I just had money, my family would be so much more happier. I feel like everything would just be so much, everything would be so much better. No one would be getting into fights. We wouldn't have to keep renting or or waiting on bills or any of that kind of stuff. But what I didn't realize is that God was the only answer to my family being happy and content.
Right.
The more they had, the worse it was for them. Because guess what? I moved to America, and you know when kids move out, you get more money because you pay for them. And the more that they kind of had, the more my mum and dad kept butting heads. They almost got a divorce. My older brother wanted to kill himself. My little brother was smoking dope every other day. So money wasn't the answer. It was God what they needed. That's what they needed. That's what they needed. The number of people from other nations I've had the privilege to help become disciples, from my first fruit, Alistair, right here, to many other nations in Africa, South America, and Asia, such as one of my really close friends, Shaw, in Hong Kong. In Matthew 28, verse 19.
Come on.
Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, not just your community, not just your community, of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. I would hate to think where I would be today if I had not responded to God's call. I have seen the lives of my friends, my family, and my work colleagues that are full of divorce, addiction, bitterness, lack of friends, fear, heartache, and some are even dead and have gone without no hope of salvation. All because they either did not respond to the initial call, or like Abraham's father Terah, only went halfway. We need to respond to God's call to become a leader. To be a Christian, to be Christ-like, is the call to become a leader. Because Jesus was a leader. Like Jesus, we're not to pursue self-happiness, but create national and global happiness through the preaching of the gospel, which is the good news.
Come on.
I remember my calls into leadership. To come, the first time I was called was to come out to some staff meetings in Los Angeles because I got introduced to the church and stuff in Los Angeles. They said, yeah, come to the staff meetings and stuff, or come join ICCM, which stands for International Christian College of Ministry. It's like a university thing where people who don't have degrees have the opportunity to receive a full accredited bachelor degree, master's, and PhD. To have that in the ministry, which is awesome. But I refused because I love basketball more than anything else. And then, of course, life went really badly. Second time, I then responded to God's call, came into the ministry, led a great Bible talk. It was awesome. It was an awesome year. Many people got baptized. I even started dating my beautiful now wife. And then, after that, messed up. I left leadership, the area that I was at, and then Megan broke up with me. Then I was called to lead again. After I repented. The key word, after I repented. Okay. Because I was in a bunch of sin. After I repented, I started leading a small group in Western Sydney. I then started dating Megan again. I then married Megan, which was awesome. And then we went to Hong Kong to help out the church there, and now we lead the church here in Brisbane. Many times I was called by God, but each time I failed, I started doing it for myself.
Yeah.
And each time I started doing it for myself, life never went well. It never does. What are you following God for? What are you following God for? You should follow God because you love God, not the benefits. Not because you love the Christians and you like the friendships. Don't follow God because of the friendships. Don't follow God because of the things that you get from it. Follow God because you flat love God. That's what it should be. We need to follow God and become a leader in His kingdom. Luke 18, verse 29 to 30. Truly I tell you, Jesus said to them, no one who has left home, or wife, or brothers or sisters, or parents, or children for the sake of the kingdom of God will fail to receive many times as much in this age and the age to come eternal life. Very few actually have the foresight to understand what it will mean in their life if they do not become a leader when they have the talent to do so. They end up submitting to less talented Christians. So much like myself in the area that I was actually at when I was leading one of the parts in Sydney, I wasn't very talented, but I was very willing, and a lot of the talented people just were not willing. And so Judges actually talks about this, and this is what ends up happening. Judges 9, verse 8 to 15. One day, the trees went out to anoint a king for themselves. They said to the olive tree, "Be our king." But the olive tree answered, "Should I give up my oil, by which both gods and humans have honored, to hold sway over the trees?" Next, the tree said to the fig tree, "Come and be our king." But the fig tree replied, "Should I give up my fruit so good and sweet to hold over sway of the trees?" Then the tree said to the vine, "Come and be our king." But the vine answered, "Should I give up my wine, which cheers both gods and humans, to hold sway over the trees?" Finally, all the trees said to the thorn bush, "Come and be our king." The thorn bush said to the trees, "If you really want to anoint me king, come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, then let fire come out from the thorn bush and consume the seed eaters of Lebanon." Devoting your life to seeking potential personal progress in a worldly career rather than leadership in the kingdom will always come back to bite you. It's always going to come back to bite you. You have less capable people to mentor you when you do that on your daily spiritual walk or on your lack of spirituality. You have less capable people discipling your marriage. That's what ends up happening. And then you end up having less capable people to influence your children. You end up being drawn to worldly people who treat you well and lead you away from God.
Come on.
You become critical. You become opinionated, wanting influence without responsibility. You then feel disrespected when people don't value your opinion as much as they do in the world, and it's all because your life doesn't match up to your opinion. You'll end up learning people don't follow your words, people follow your lifestyle. That's what ends up happening. You got to respond to God's call to become a foreign missionary. That's what Abraham was. God's first missionary to the land of Canaan. I didn't want to live in Sydney, I'll be honest. I'm from Brisbane, I don't know if you know, it's very relaxed, it's very nice here. It's quite, we're originally from the Gold Coast, as you can say. Okay, great, like it's chill, it's awesome. Okay. I don't want to go, I hated it. I went one time, didn't like it, wasn't for me. But because I did, so many great things have happened. I met Alistair, and I also met this other girl, she's probably watching it. She does that, Steph. And then Steph. And they became disciples. These are some of my greatest friends. I imagine what would happen, all the different people, not only just those two, many others. If I just decided to go, I just want to stay here. What a selfish life. What a selfish life. Instead of responding to God's call and helping so many other people change their lives, I decided to focus on my life. What a selfish human being I would be. Perhaps God's calling you to stop being a selfish human being and to start going, you need to go save some other people. You need to stop thinking about your world and start thinking about other people in the world and to help them get out of the world. I think about Lennox and Kira, which is Leslie's brother and sister-in-law. Now it's so, they ended up coming in from the internet. They just Googled Sydney International Christian Church and they were like, whoop, popped through and they were like, are we in the right place? And they were in the right place. It's so important to have and use the internet. Because right after that, Leslie came and she's here today because of it. And then it's so important to reach out to people and just have a selfless life. You can go up and you can start evangelizing anyone. You can even evangelize a Muslim. And what can happen from that? Someone like Elias can happen from that. Because the Muslim was like, I might not be interested, but I know someone who definitely is.
Let's go, Elias.
And he came from a Maronite Catholic background who was very disillusioned and was like, I want to follow God.
Come on.
Yeah,
And so came Elias.
Let's go.
Come on, Elias.
Even Sean Valenzuela, who has gone on to lead Samoa, his brother Eric went as a missionary from Sydney to Hong Kong and then Samoa, meeting the very first convert there ever in the entire history of mankind, ever in that land. Also secured his wife there, Christine,
Come on, mother.
who later ended up bringing Isaac along. Isaac's along here because of it.
Come on.
You just have to decide to respond to God's calling and give Him the opportunity to work through your life.
Come on,
In
babe.
conclusion, Abraham, faith to respond to God's call. Point number 1, why was Abraham in the Hall of Faith for the very first time? Because he was willing.
Right.
Because he was willing. Point number 2, how did Abraham change a nation? Because he had the heart to. And point number 3, how can we imitate Abraham's faith today? You can imitate Abraham's faith today by becoming a Christian, then a leader, and then a missionary. It's never too late to answer God's call. My challenge is super simple. Become a disciple by this time next week. Come out to the inaugural service. It's going to be a blast. We're going to see Oogie's from around the world. We're going to have prizes. It's going to be fantastic. And my wife is making some handmade tacos. It's pretty much authentic. It's legit. Come check it out. I'll finish it off with a poem.
Come on, bro.
Okay. It says, "Shall I spend the days of my youth in pride, and leaving no longing of life denied? Shall I heap to myself an earthly treasure, and worship before the throne of pleasure? Ambition and hope and life are mine, and dreams as bright as the stars that shine. With empty glamour, the world allures, the devil beckons, the flesh conjures. Shall I close my heart to the God of truth, and leave him out my years of youth? Then will I have wasted away the best, return to the Father and offer the rest. A shattered vessel, a few short years, a life made bitter by selfish fears. Since God so loved that he gave his all, shall I give less when I hear his call? O no, Lord Jesus, while I am young, to teach your word will I give my tongue. My feet to follow where you shall lead, my hands to labor for you indeed. And all my ambition, my heart has known, I yield to you to be yours alone. The plans that selfishly I have made, with hopes and dreams that before you laid, a faithful steward I long to be over any talent entrusted me. That when I face the eternal Son, and he sees his fruit, he may say, well done. Oh, take heart, my life, my all. I have heard your voice. I have met your call. Amen.
Come on.